Hey you guys, this is Sarah Prince with The Sarah Show. I wanted to jump on here really quick and let you know, actually, I have done a podcast show before. 2 years ago, I had a podcast called Breakthrough to Your Beautiful Life, where we talked about ways to increase your awareness so that you can change the life and follow your heart in the way that you truly desire. But life happened and that podcast no longer exists. So I wanted to play it for you here on The Sarah Show as the first 20 episodes or so, just as an added bonus, absolutely free, because a lot of what I talked about on that podcast is very similar to what we will be talking about on this podcast. So please enjoy, and I look forward to sending new episodes to you with The Sarah Show in the weeks to come. Welcome to the Breakthrough to Your Beautiful Life podcast. This is Sarah Prince. I am talking about the 4 different places your thoughts come from today. Because we're told so often, if you've got issues, if you need to change your beliefs, if you need to change your mindset, you've got to change your thoughts. Well, I'm here to tell you there are more than one place that your thoughts come from, and we can't change all of them, so we're going to dig into that today. But before I get to that, I wanted to personally extend to you my first invitation ever. We are having the Illuminate event in Centerville, Utah on October 6th, the first Saturday in October. And I'm so excited. We're going to be having speakers from all over coming to you and helping you reveal the best parts of you. And I'm so excited because so many of us are drowning in the everyday and wonder why it's not enough and wonder why nothing seems to be working, and you just feel so empty and broken, and that has to stop. And so Illuminate, this event is going to be helping you discover those parts of you that maybe you have forgotten, that you've undernourished, or that you didn't even know about, and a plan to move forward in supporting yourself in those areas so that everything you set out to achieve just comes to fruition. So if you want to look into more of that, our early bird tickets are on sale. Just go to sarahbethprince.com/illuminate. That's ILLUMINATE, and we will see you there. I'm so excited and look forward to meeting you. So back to what we're talking about today. As I said, so many of us are told that we need to just change the way we think, change the thoughts that we're having. And over time, with personal development and mindset and all sorts of things that we can talk about, this does happen, but never 100%. Because what people don't realize is that your thoughts come from 4 different places. And we're going to touch on each of these and what you can do about it, so that once you have this awareness of, that thought came from there and that thought came from there, you know exactly what to do, how to respond, and to use your power within you to never let any negative thoughts get in the way ever again. Okay, so your thoughts come from 4 primary sources. First is yourself, consciously, so you intentionally think specific thoughts. Like when someone tells you, don't think about an elephant, you automatically think about an elephant, right? That is your conscious mind thinking, putting thoughts in your head. So those come from you. The second source of your thoughts is your intuition, or your higher power, or if you believe in God or the universe or your higher self, whatever your higher power is, that is what sends you thoughts that come through intuition. You don't consciously think of them. It's where ideas are born. It's where inspiration comes. And they come from a higher energy, a higher level, and are gifted to you because we all We've all had an idea, right? And you think, where did that come from? That is your intuition. We have thoughts and ideas that come from our intuition. Excellent. The third source is thoughts come from our brain. And let me explain this a little bit. So as you grow, starting from a little child and growing into an adult, your brain is working constantly to try to be the most efficient organ in your body and to do things as effectively and efficiently as possible. So anytime you have repetitious thoughts, experiences, feelings, anything whatsoever, your brain is going to hardwire in thought patterns of what you habitually think. And so often as adults, once we're grown, we can have thought patterns that just constantly run over and over again, or constantly appear from similar everyday circumstances that we're used to because our brain has hardwired those thought patterns into our life. And I'm going to give you some examples of this as we go on. But you aren't consciously thinking of them. Those are subconscious thoughts that your brain automatically gives you that turn into beliefs and what so. The last source of your thoughts is what I call the adversary. You can call it your ego, your dark side, your lesser self, Satan, the devil, hell's angels, whatever you specify as your adversary. Most people call it your ego, the negative part of you that's constantly feeding you the negative thoughts. You're not consciously choosing those negative thoughts all of the time. Your brain isn't always sending those negative patterns to you, though over time it sure can. And you know that your intuition absolutely is not sending those negative thoughts to you. So we group this category, this source of negative thoughts, as I will call it your adversary. So we have yourself, your intuition, your brain, and your adversary. Awesome. Okay, Sarah, what do we do with this? What does this mean? What can I do with this? Well, the great thing is when people tell you to choose better thoughts, choose to think more positively, change your thoughts, that is only applicable, for the most part, to the thoughts that come from you. What you consciously choose, what you intentionally tell yourself every day with affirmations, what you purposefully write down, what you choose to think about on a regular basis. You can change those thoughts, absolutely, 100%, and there's no reason why you shouldn't. There's no reason why you can't. What you consciously choose to focus on, you can easily change. And if you find yourself, thinking about something that of course isn't supporting you, you can easily dismiss what's there and move on to something more supportive, using affirmations or positive things you tell yourself to lift yourself. Excellent. Easy. 1 down, 3 to go. So your intuition, the thoughts that come from that source, we really don't need to worry about if those are good or bad, because we know ultimately everything that comes from our intuition is going to be a positive, uplifting, inspirational thought or idea, especially after we have asked for help. Maybe you've prayed for guidance, maybe you've centered yourself and you're meditating and you're asking for ideas to flow, or they come all of a sudden, just a bolt of lightning, an idea you have that you immediately know you need to act on. We don't need to worry about these things being negative in any manner at all. But what you want to do is increase your ability to receive these kinds of thoughts, to receive more inspirational ideas from your higher power through your intuition. And that goes back to the daily patterns we talk about a lot on this podcast, your rituals and habits, especially through meditation and calming your mind so that you connect with your higher power on a consistent basis to open those channels of intuition. Great. So no worries about that. We just want to consistently work to develop ourselves to receive more intuition. Awesome. Great. 2 down, 2 to go. Now we're getting into the nitty-gritty. The stuff we don't really want to talk about, but there are ways to conquer these next 2, absolutely. So the third one was thoughts that come from your brain as hardwired hardwired, let me say that right, habitual patterns of thoughts that you continually run. And most of the time, these patterns of thought that your brain is continually running are not your fault. Especially because a lot of these patterns are formed as a child before we knew any better. But now that you're aware of it, you absolutely can still change it. But how do you recognize what is a habitual pattern and what is not? So let me give you an example. One time last year, I was in a very sacred place. My religious faith, we have temples that we can go attend and spend time in there in prayer and meditation and doing work for others. And I was there reading my scriptures and praying and connecting to my higher power. And I was asking for inspiration about certain things in my life. And I was inspired to read a certain scripture. And after I read this, I knew immediately and intuitively that it was an answer to my prayer. And I felt that peace. But then, very quickly thereafter, I had a thought enter my mind that, oh, this just means you're not enough, Sarah. If this is the answer you're getting, it just means you're not enough and you haven't been good enough yet. And at first I was really upset because I thought that this negative answer that I'd received was from intuition. But then I realized very shortly thereafter, thank heaven, that this was a negative pattern that my brain ran. As soon as I had received that answer through my intuition, immediately thereafter my brain kicked in and thought, wait, whoa, because of the negative patterns run as a child, we're automatically going to run this one, and we're saying that you're not enough because that's what's going on. And our brain constantly tries to do this. Because change, even for our brain, takes effort, and our brain wants to exude the least amount of effort as possible. And so when you have a thought pattern like you're not enough, or depressive feelings, depression and depressing ideas, if you have anxiety running, if you have worry syndrome, if you're constantly replaying ideas or fears in your head that are negative, this is your brain talking. This is your brain sending you these negative patterns that we want to get rid of. And your brain absolutely can send you positive patterns too. Absolutely. And this is why we're wanting to change this, right? So that over time, our brain is continually running the positive patterns. But we have to break up the negative ones and replace it with the positive, and run that positive as much as possible, and then more than the negative ones ever did, so that your brain will run the positive patterns. And so you can recognize the patterns by what you easily slip into. When you're not consciously thinking about something, if you're not connecting to your higher power to receive intuition, but what your mind just kind of runs along and starts to think, it's usually triggered by a negative thing, like a negative experience. You can tell because your body doesn't feel good most of the time. Most of us are in a place where we're trying to get out of that negativity. That is when your brain is running the patterns you don't want. Those thoughts. When you have a fight in your head with your spouse about something he did or she did that bugged you, and you've already done this fight and what you're going to say in your head before you even talk to him, that's a pattern. That's a pattern in your brain. You didn't necessarily choose it, but over time you did. See how this kind of filters into the other areas. They kind of comb together like a web, but they still have their distinct areas of focus and the distinctions that we can tell apart from both. And as you listen more to the podcast, we talk about lots of ideas of changing these patterns in your brain. But now you can recognize them. And when you do recognize that it's a pattern you don't want, you can simply say, oh my gosh, I'm going to step aside from this, because you've stopped, you've become aware of it. Choose to step aside, accept, and be okay that you had that thought pattern in your mind, and say, I'm gonna pivot, and I'm gonna choose this path. And we do this almost every day. Like, for example, with your kids, they do something that irks you, and you immediately, oh my gosh, why can't my child do this, blah blah blah, and it goes on and on and on and on, and we let it get at us. That's typically a pattern, because we've run it so many times. We can say, oh my gosh, look what I'm doing. As soon as you recognize what your brain is doing, stop, take a breath if you need to, breathe in and out deeply, step aside, and just observe what's going on. Like, oh, I was thinking this because this happened. Well, I don't want to think about that. Of course, I want to think about something better. So if you need to make something right, just go do that. If you need to give the child a hug, just go do that. Or just shift it away and think about, you know what, this may have happened, but I'm going to focus on this good thing. My child did this for me today, and it was wonderful. Or whatever the situation is. Okay? If you have questions about this, I would love to hear from you. Send me comments, and I would be happy to answer more questions on this topic, because we can go in a million directions here. Okay, now the fourth source of thoughts, the worst, is your adversary. Your ego, your dark side, the devil, whatever. And your adversary, originally, when you were a child and you weren't consciously aware of the negative thoughts you were having, your adversary took apart and put those original negative thoughts into you, and because you weren't consciously aware, those played a huge role in developing these negative habitual patterns that your brain runs. And it started with your adversary. But your adversary is still constantly going to put in your mind all the crap it wants to. And this is going to go on until the day you die. It will never be completely gone. Ever. Because there has to be a balance in all things. Without the good, or without the bad, we can't know the good. So I'm sorry to say it, but you are never going to fully rid yourself, your mind, your thoughts, your ideas, of anything negative that your adversary puts there. But you aren't consciously thinking about these things. Obviously, your intuition isn't sending you these things. Your brain can start running them after your adversary puts a crappy thought in there. But most likely, once you become aware and pay attention to what's going on in your mind, you can pick out the differences between like a brain pattern and an adversarial thought. I'll give you another example of this. For example, last year I was in a department store trying on some clothes, and my children were with me, and it was one of those dressing rooms where you have a curtain for a door that someone can just slide right open and see you changing, which really bugged me because you didn't have as much privacy. And I had my 3 little boys with me. Number one mistake right there. And so I'm trying to try on an outfit while trying to keep them happy and to stop them from fighting, but then also to keep my toddler from running out. He would run out past the curtain and I'd have to go get him, and to not have him open the curtain so no one would see me, right? And I was stressed. I thought, I came here because I was rewarding myself with some money, and I was spending it on a new outfit. And I'd planned this out, and it was great, and I felt good about it. But then while I was in the midst of trying to try on an outfit, all this darn stress, these habitual patterns my brain was running, were getting me agitated because of what my children were doing. And then suddenly I'm looking in the mirror at this outfit I've got on, and I have a thought from my adversary, and to me it's a he. My adversary is a he. And he said, you know what, honestly, I can't remember the exact words, but it was something like, why are you even shopping anyway? You don't deserve these new clothes. Something like that. And it was after like a moment that I'd paused and looked in the mirror and I'd let the stress go for just a second. And then suddenly, bam, it was like, Sarah, you don't deserve these clothes anyway. What are you doing? And I heard that and I immediately went, I'm sorry. Thank you for sharing, but that is not what I'm choosing to think. I absolutely deserve this outfit because I accomplished this goal and I set aside this money for it, and I'm going to spend happily and enjoy this abundance. And I was so proud of myself for that moment because of all that had been happening. I was able to recognize that that thought did not come from me. It did not come from bad patterns. It did not come from my intuition, of course. It was an adversarial thought trying to put something in there to make the situation worse. And that's often when it happens. They're not the kinds of thoughts like your brain patterns that just automatically run and spill over and keep going and going and going. These are more like clear, distinct thoughts that happen often when you are doing something new that's good for yourself. When you're treating yourself, when you're enjoying yourself, when you're doing something awesome and you're feeling proud about your accomplishments, this is when your adversary is most likely going to come in and distinctly say, "Oh, whatever. You don't deserve this." Etc. What people call imposter syndrome. We have these feelings of being an imposter. That starts a lot with our adversary. Say you're speaking on stage or you're sharing something in front of people and something keeps telling you, who are you to talk to these people? That's your adversary. Those are the thoughts we can do absolutely nothing about. However, we can recognize it and say, I often just speak it out loud. When I have thoughts like that come to me, I will literally picture him, my adversary, in my mind and say, you know what? Thanks for trying to do what you're doing, but I'm going to do this. I absolutely am going to go this way. I absolutely deserve this, or whatever, and move forward and pick the positive reinforcement and just squash that negative thought from the adversary and just shove it back in his face. So I hope this has been enlightening to you of the 4 different sources of your thoughts: your conscious self, your higher power through your intuition, the habitual patterns that your brain runs, and then your adversary or ego. And you absolutely can change your thoughts from what you can control. You absolutely can overall have better, more positive, affirming thought patterns and inspirational ideas and supportive statements you constantly say to yourself. You absolutely can outweigh the bad with the good. What's that statistic like? Of the hundreds of thousands of thoughts we have every day, 80% of them are negative. You are no longer that statistic. The people that are not aware of how they can tell the difference between their thoughts, the different sources of their thoughts, and what to do about each and every kind, you are not that statistic. I want you and all of us listening to become a statistic that says, you know what, 80% of my thoughts are good. They're positive. They reinforce and affirm my higher purpose. They lift and inspire me. And they do not break me down. They are good. And then that other 20%, we can do nothing about except just choose to not focus on them, cast them aside, and continually reaffirm the good. So, I hope this has been helpful and enlightening to you. Again, if you want to come to Bountiful, Utah to illuminate, I would love to meet you. please check that out at sarahbethprince.com/illuminate. The early bird tickets are on sale right now. They're just $17. If you are seeking more clarity, you are what you need to do to get out of this funk you're stuck in, this is the event for you. And I am so excited to see you there. Let me know if you're coming. Again, if you love this podcast, please share it and then subscribe, rate, and review so that we can pass this on to more of those wonderful individuals that need to hear it. And I look forward to talking to you soon.